New tonight, Rudy Giuliani slamming Michael Cohen for taping conversations with Trump and others, claiming it's evidence that Cohen is an unethical person who lacks character.
I've practiced law for a long time. If you tape record your client and you lie to your client about it, you have no character. You forfeited your character. You forfeited your law license as far as I'm concerned.
Up front now, former vice president of Trump Plaza Casino in Atlantic City, Jack O'Donnell. And Jack, I appreciate your time tonight. Okay, so you have a view on this that very few people do. You've been there. You say taping conversations without permission was business as usual for Trump and his team, right?
Absolutely. I think it was very well known, even going back to the John Barron tapes, which we all heard. So we knew he tape recorded his own conversations.
That's
but
when
further,
he pretended
I
to
was
be John
actually
Barron
warned.
calling the New York Post, just so people know, with gossip. Sorry, continue your point.
Correct. Well, just before I became the president and chief operating officer of the organization, my boss at the time, Steve Hyde, came to me and said, hey, you have a lot of conversations with Donald. You're going to be on the phone a lot. Just be aware that somebody's always going to be listening. It might be recorded, and it might just be somebody else in the office listening in on the conversations. But I was very aware that your conversations were being heard by more than just Donald Trump when you spoke to him.
I mean, it's pretty incredible. You actually have talked about, Jack, you told us when you were getting ready for this interview that you swept your office for bugs more than once in a single year because you were so concerned.
I did. There was a lot going on in the business, and I became suspicious early on when I moved into the president's office. And I did ask our security people to sweep the office. And then it did become a regular thing. Like every 6 months, I had, somebody go through the office, one of our surveillance people, just to make sure. We weren't doing anything wrong, but, the red flags went off a couple times when I was on calls, and some, with Donald, some without him.
What do you mean red flags?
That I thought it was necessary. Well, listen, I'm not a technical guy, and I would think it would be a bad recording if you could hear sounds. But, the clicks of things going on and off at certain times in conversations, that mostly led me to believe that it was something in New York. But I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't something in my office as well.
So why do you think Trump did this? I mean, he's the one, right, that you believe was driving this. I just want to be clear, right? You think that this came from the top and that this was how Donald Trump, did business.
Yeah, I think it was business as usual for him. And quite frankly, Aaron, part of it was from an administrative standpoint that somebody would listen in. At the time, his administrative assistant, Norma Foderer, I think she listened to a lot of conversations, and I think that was just to keep Donald in line. But further, I've been in the room with him when he's had other people sitting in there, and he puts you in, he doesn't identify that there's other people listening in on the conversation. Yeah. And so he has a voyeur piece to him, that he does quite frequently.
It's interesting when you say a voyeur piece. I've been at different types of calls, obviously, but in the room with him in his office as well. And I would have to agree with you. He never identifies who's on the call, which one would think from a business perspective would certainly not be normal protocol in a professional setting. So I want to play for you, Jack, part of the tape, since you've dealt with the president so much, that Michael Cohen released, right? So this is Cohen talking to Trump about paying the Playmate, paying for the Playmate story of her alleged affair with Trump. Here's a clip.
I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be.
What financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
Don't pay with cash.
No. I got no.
Hey, no, how are you?
So Jack, Cohen's lawyer says Trump is, paying cash, which obviously would imply a lot of shady things. Giuliani, Trump's lawyer, says Trump is saying pay by check. Others say Trump is just saying, okaying the cash and saying check, as in check off an item on his to-do list. Someone who's been in these rooms, who's heard the president, has heard the words he uses, what do you hear?
Well, I heard something different, and I did listen to the tape several times. What I heard, and the way I interpreted the word check, was an affirmation, this is how I want it done, which is, I'm surprised nobody else has.
So you mean an affirmation of paying by cash, or an affirmation of what? Sorry, just make sure I understand.
An affirmation of paying with cash, because that is how Trump would speak. He would say cash, check, as in you get it, correct? And so that's how I interpreted. Now, look, I could be wrong, but it sounded feasible to me that that's what he was saying.
Well, I mean, look, in some of these cases, when you can't exactly understand, what you need is people who know someone to know their particular verbal tics and what they do and what they say. So certainly your opinion more informed than most who are listening to this. Jack, I appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaron.